host of Late Night with Seth Meyers, airs on NBC weeknights at 12:35 a.m. after Jimmy Fallon. Good to see you, Seth Meyers. How are you?
Great to see you. I'm fantastic. It's so lovely to be here.
That is awesome to have you here. So let's just jump right into the sports world of it all.
Please.
Do I assume you are a Pittsburgh Penguin guy because you're a Steeler guy?
Yeah. I'm a huge Pittsburgh sports fan, but I'm not a huge hockey fan. With that said, I'm rooting for the Penguins. I watched last night. I was very happy for my Penguins fans, friends who are fans.
Right, and at one point...
Well, when it was 3-0, I texted one of my friends, Kevin, who's always stressed out. I wanted to say, this must be so nice and relaxing for you. And I'm so glad I didn't. Because even though they won, when it was 3-3, my friendship with him would have been over.
It would have been over.
Yeah, he would have blamed me.
See, because I'm one of those guys that I hit send on
you
those
are.
texts. I do, and
You're the guy who knocks.
Well, I am the Walter White of the situation,
exactly.
yes. And because I just want to share the moment with my friends, but I'm also fully aware that sports can go completely in the other direction.
Yeah, especially playoff hockey seems to be one of those fast swings in the other direction.
Right.
So anyways, but disaster averted.
I did that actually with Kurt Warner.
Okay.
When if you were watching the NCAA tournament, Northern Iowa was up by 10 points on Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And they show him celebrating. And I just grabbed my phone. I'm like, man, congrats on another Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And he texts me back, not yet, but I'm feeling it. And then
It's just a meltdown.
it fell apart.
Yeah.
And I sent him a text after that, just 3 words. I'm so sorry.
At least you can take the blame. At least you know you screwed up and it was your fault.
Well,
and
when
despite whatever happened on the court, it was you. You blew it.
When you hit send, you have to take that responsibility when it all goes to crap later on.
Because to be honest, we want to feel like, oh, we were being gracious and saying congrats, but really we wanted to be a part of it. Like that's why you hit send.
And one of the things that I've seen you talk about on your show about your sports fandom is that you have no control over it.
No.
And you're throwing yourself into an uncontrollable situation willingly.
I'm having a lot of discussions with my wife right now. We have a newborn, and I want to thank you very much. A lot of onesies showing up, all the teams. And my wife is just asking, do you want to put this on this child? Like, you are as upset as often as you are happy about sports.
Yes.
And the answer, of course, is yes. I do. I want somebody to go through it with me. Selfishly, I don't care if it's awful for him.
But
I think
not
it'll be more
like
fun for me if I have a friend.
But if you're putting your child, is it a he or she?
It's a he.
Okay, okay. If you're putting him in a Steelers onesie, you're pretty much setting him up for once every 3 to 4 years, the ultimate success.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to impress upon my wife. Is ultimately we have some pretty good teams with some pretty good histories. Yeah. Especially with the Steelers.
Now, if you were a Cleveland Brown fan, child services might be.
They would have every right to come and get him.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm happy to say we're very close to 16 onesies that are Steelers based. She was saying to me, how many do we need? Yeah. And I was trying to explain to her, well, there's 16 games.
Yeah.
And I think photo op wise, you don't want him to repeat.
True.
Yeah.
Because that would be embarrassing.
That
like
would be
week two's win.
Yeah.
You can't tell it the difference between week 9.
I might even let him wear one of those awful Bumblebee throwback onesies.
Do they make those?
No, probably not.
Should.
Even babies are like, no, thank you.
They don't. Of all the things that the NFL needs to get on, that third alternate onesie.
Oh, I'm so worried. I'm so worried about the Steelers Thursday night if they're going to do, what do they call it? The color blast?
The color rush.
Color rush. Because the Steelers, it has to be all black, right?
I would think, or all gold.
That'll be awful.
All gold. They are the Thursday night games, as you know, which now NBC will be a part of.
Yeah.
And the Bucks-Rams game was literally ketchup versus mustard.
That was one of the worst. Although the Bills-Jets was the worst.
Well, for colorblind people, did you hear about that?
That was awful. Well, it's the one thing everybody knows about colorblind is that's the one thing they can't do.
And they also, for Jet fans, did the colorblind fans a favor that night, the way that normally goes. And that's the thing, too, that with my wife, when my kids were born, I'm a New Yorker, all the Patriot gear would come to the house, and the Red Sox gear would come to the house.
Right.
And conversations had to be had, despite the warmth of the situation. It's a newborn child, and families are trying to share. Did anybody send to the house something that was offensive to you?
I can't decide. Sometimes it's a jackpot for me. My wife could care less about sports.
Okay.
My father-in-law, my brother-in-law could care less about sports.
The whole family's married
dead.
into.
And they're so
they're dead.
They're dead to sports, and they're so lovely. They are the most warm people.
Right.
Nothing is more irritating than people who walk into a room when you're watching sports who don't know anything about sports.
Oh gosh.
And say, "Who's winning?" And I'm like, "You don't even know who they are.
Can you read the room?"
Yeah. I don't walk in when you're listening to country music and say, "Who's this?" I don't care. I'm not going to make you talk for the purposes of talking.
So what's the worst situation you've had with one of those?
Well, it's not worse because, again, it always comes from kindness.
Of course, you got to remember that.
I mean,
excellent caveat, by the way.
My brother-in-law will overhear that Pittsburgh beat New York. He won't realize it means hockey.
Okay.
And so he'll come in, and this is, 2 weeks ago, and say, "Congrats on the Steelers." And then I have to, I mean, he doesn't even know it's not football season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to coach them up? Is there a part of you that wants to?
No, I'm not. Again, I'm not. The window closed on them being sports fans, and I'm fine with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with the Steelers this year in particular,
I feel great.
Where, I mean, it was a great season.
It was a great season.
But there was all sorts of injuries that happened that could have.
It was very tough. I feel like that. Again, it's that weird thing of when a game turns on a fumble.
Yeah.
Just as easily could have gone the other way. But
right.
I felt great about the way it went. I always feel good about the draft because when it comes to the Steelers, I'm an eternal optimist.
So did you watch the draft this year at all? Did you check
I will say, with a newborn, the draft is a tough sell. I'm like, you can sell. It's important for me to want. And baseball's become a tough sell.
Yeah.
I'm basically pushing all my chips in on 3 hours a week. I need to watch the Steelers in the fall. I think that's what.
You've got to pick your spots.
I got to pick my spots. And I think looking for non-negotiable things. And the draft is a tough sell.
That you just sit around. Come on, honey, let's sit around with our kid and watch individuals read out names once every 10 minutes.
Because my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, they're lovely, but they're not as smart as my wife. My wife's a lawyer, so even though she doesn't know what the NFL draft is, she would start asking questions. And once she understood that the next day I could just Google this list of men and save what takes hours.
It is when you think about it, Seth. I'm with Seth Meyers, Late Night with Seth Meyers on NBC here on the Rich Eisen Show. That it is the biggest dog and pony show the NFL can do, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Because technically, you can get in 2016 an encrypted website, just like your fantasy football draft.
Yep.
And draft a bunch of players in one night.
Yep.
In the NFL.
Of course.
Instead, it's somebody sitting in a room phoning in a pick, probably on a landline.
Yep.
Probably the only landlines that are available anymore, and writing down the pick and handing it, like a courier.
Yep.
Like we're back in 1776. They should send it in via Raven, like it's Game of Thrones, and read out the name. It's unnecessary.
Again, yeah, but it is like brilliant. I mean, again, the NFL knows what they're doing.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. But and let me make it clear, I didn't watch, but I could tell you everybody the Steelers drafted. I'm on top of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who did you like? Did you?
Well, I don't watch any tape beforehand. So all I'm going off are mock drafts. So when they take Artie Burns,
yes,
like everybody else, I thought we were going to take William Jackson III. Mm-hmm. So then I'm upset about two people I couldn't pick out of a lineup. I'm like, oh no, my dreams of this man I've never seen.
What are the Steelers and all of their?
But I'm excited. Artie Burns and Sean Davis and.
This is all good, man.
Javon Hargrave.
I like it. And so before we take our first break, technically your child, your newborn, 6-week-old, at the time for the draft, just 1 month in the world, saved you from having to explain to your wife what Laramie Tunsil was doing with that gas mask, as I had to explain to everybody who's ever come up to me since then what was happening.
Those moments are actually great because that is a moment. There are a few things like that. The Bartolo Colon home run.
Yes.
Where they're interesting enough that I can sit my wife down and say, hey, I have a sports story that has a human element that you are going to enjoy. And so I'm very gracious anytime sports gives me something like that I can actually talk about with my wife.
But for me, someone like in your position like yourself, to have a visual like that, the jokes kind of write themselves when something like that happens.
It's been that kind of year, hasn't it, in sports and politics, where it feels like it's just a scripted comedy.
Where truth is the punchline. It's kind of crazy.
It seems like it should be easy, but at the same time, it's almost so easy it's hard.
And the next day when Tunsil was introduced in Miami as the newest pick, they went to the podium and held a press conference without him. And it's true. They announced that he was unavailable because he had an allergic reaction.
Oh, no.
And my thought to myself is, again, the punchline writes itself.
Absolutely. Well, they made him take his gas mask off. And, then
and of course, everything.
Yeah.
He's in
pollen.
He has no immune system whatsoever. We're back in 60 Ticks the Clock with Seth Meyers. More of a conversation on sports and the late night comedy world with Seth Meyers. And we're back here on The Rich Eisen Show. Seth Meyers here still in our Rich Eisen Show New York City studio. We've got the commissioner of baseball coming on tomorrow, Rob Manfred, Ben McKenzie from Gotham. Bobby Cannavale will be here on Friday's show as we're here in New York City for the rest of the week. And so how do you, I've asked you this before, I'll ask you again. How do we fit the Red Sox into this system
Where
here?
do they live? Well, so my dad's from Pittsburgh, but I grew up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And so we became Red Sox fans. There was a real lull for the Pirates, I don't know if people remember.
Yes, so, a lull.
Also, before, DirecTV, MLB TV,
right.
I feel like baseball more than anything, you follow locally. Because you get the 162 games on local television.
No doubt.
Whereas it's easy to follow you can move anywhere, and my dad was always going to watch the Steelers. But we became huge Red Sox fans. We moved there at a good time, which was 84. And a good time in that something terrible happened that then made you a fan for life.
Yeah, obviously.
But that was the greatest. The 2004 World Series is still the greatest sporting moment for me as a fan.
Well, that guy over there, Chris Brockman, would 100% agree with you.
Absolutely.
On that.
I felt like the way I've described it to people is I felt like Pinocchio becoming a real boy. Because I just got to then have an actual life after that. I didn't have to watch every single game from start to finish.
No, and you didn't have the feeling that, they're going to blow this. I don't know how, but it's going to happen, and it's going to ruin the rest of my week.
Yeah.
So who does that make Geppetto in all of this? Is it Francona as Geppetto? Or
I think Ortiz is Geppetto.
David Ortiz.
David Ortiz is
Then who is Manny Ramirez?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm realizing I don't know
I don't know anything about
Pinocchio. Yeah, I've got, that's it. I've got Pinocchio and I've got Geppetto, and that's it. Theo Epstein, is Epstein, he
would be a good Geppetto.
He'd be the young Geppetto. He's sort of like the Benjamin Button.
Geppepstein?
He's the Geppepstein, yes.
I can't believe that didn't catch on.
They should make T-shirts. They should make T-shirts. So, but when you were younger, because I think we're about the same age, the Pirates in the late 70s, were you into all of that? You did miss that?
Yeah, born in 73, so I kind of missed all the Steelers. Like a faint awareness of it. I remember when I was about 9 years old, my birthday present my dad got me, he had saved all these Sports Illustrateds with the Steelers covers for their Super Bowl wins. And that was like the handing over the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like that was the most important. But again, then there was a real lull for the Steelers too. And the 80s were not great.
The Bubby Brister years.
The Bubby Brister years.
Try to forget those.
Yeah, that was Mark Malone. Not a good time to be a Steelers fan. And so, but we toughed it out. We never gave up on the Steelers.
No, and so if you're born in 73, then there's been, just like me, I was born in 69. There's been Noel, Cowher, Tomlin, period.
Yep.
There's nothing else like that. In any sport anywhere.
And I've been really lucky. A couple years ago, someone from the Steelers reached out because I did an interview where I mentioned I was a Steelers fan and invited us to a game. And I brought my parents, my brother. And so we've made sort of a 1-year pilgrimage out to see the Steelers together, which has been great. And also a great time that my wife is not a sports fan and does not want to come.
She does not.
And last year we went out and had dinner with Franco Harris and his wife.
Well,
and it was the greatest thing I've given my father. And my father's met the president, thanks to me. Could care less about that, but he got to meet Franco.
Wow, Franco Harris.
Yeah.
And when people arrive in Pittsburgh, in the airport, there's a statue of George Washington.
Yeah.
And Franco Harris.
And I can tell you this, I've never seen anyone taking a picture with George Washington. And every time I've come to Pittsburgh, and that's a bigger president than the one my dad met.
and there's Franco leaning out for the ball.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if that took place today in 2016? Because I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah.
And with the 22 high definition cameras.
Yeah.
And instant replay.
Well, you would know, you would have a better sense of what happened. Yes. I think than we do now. Even now, when I watch it, It's crazy how little footage they have of it actually happening.
It's just the grainy picture of the ball either touching the ground or not.
We sat down for dinner, and of course, the first thing my dad did was tell Franco where he was during the Immaculate Reception. And when he finished, I said to Franco, you know, you're the only person who never has to tell anyone where you were during the Immaculate Reception. You're the only person, because everybody you ever meet thinks you want to hear where they were.
Oh, man. You had the front row seat. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, because I just remember the We Are Family.
Well, there was also
Omar
in
Moreno
on that there was that great Sports Illustrated cover with Willie Stargell and Bradshaw. That is an iconic Sports Illustrated of my youth.
That's part of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That's part of the Dead Sea Scroll. That's the collection. Yeah.
So Permane Brothers and all of that.
Permane Brothers, the original. I don't know if you've ever been to the Big O. That the Dirty O, as it's known in Pittsburgh. It's a hot dog place near Pitt University.
I have not.
It's called the O. I've said this before. I think it's called the O. Some people say because it stands for the original, and I think it's because that's the health rating.
They put that in the window?
They put the
blue O?
Very good hot dogs, very good French fries.
Oh, my gosh. Seth Meyers here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you're mentioning Ortiz. One of your compadres from Saturday Night Live, Kenan Thompson, is nailing
It's the greatest. He was just on the show. Kenan was on the show this week, and I made him do it. And I was saying to Kenan's been on the show 13 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, having been on the show a very long time as well, you don't expect to find gold again like that so late. I mean, it's really like he's having the kind of season Ortiz is having now, like this late season. Because for Kenan to have Ortiz fall into his lap as a character, I only wish he'd found it 5 years ago. Because everything he's doing, he could have been doing 5 years ago.
It's also very similar to Garrett Morris in terms of history of Saturday Night Live.
Absolutely. Baseball. Latin baseball players make for very good.
To me.
Yeah. And also the fact that one of the products he promoted as Ortiz was Iguananox, an equinox that had lizards. And then the real David Ortiz tweeted a photo of himself pointing at an iguana that said, "Hey, Kenan, I found our first client."
No, I didn't see that.
The best. Because, of course, David Ortiz has a great sense of humor.
I did not see that.
This is, I went 2004. This is actually the greatest sports moment of my life.
Okay.
2004, I went to Nomar Bowl. Do you remember that Nomar used to have a charity called Nomar Bowl?
Vaguely.
So
I met Nomar on an airplane. It was very awkward.
Oh, my gosh.
Don't get
it. No, it did not go well. I was there for the...
We have the same birthday, and I was like, hey, Nomar, huge Red Sox fan. He goes, oh, thanks, man. And then I go, I need to say something. We have the same birthday. And he goes, oh. Happy birthday.
then they sat next to each other on the plane.
Oh, no.
And I was sitting there cackling.
That's cool. Those grown men want to know if you share their birthday.
Of course.
No, so in 2004, I go to Nomar Bowl, and the end of the night, like everybody left. At the end of the night, I ended up sitting at a bar with Kevin Millar, David Ortiz, Ben Affleck. Greatest night of my life.
Wow.
And I had been on Saturday Night Live for a few years. My best story, my best anecdote didn't crack the top 100 of those three combined.
No way.
It was
Come on.
everything you wanted. Affleck, great Hollywood anecdotes. Ortiz, Millar, just the greatest baseball stories I've ever heard in my life. It was fantastic.
Wow. And you couldn't even crack the top 100?
Everything, I would say stuff and they go, oh, cool, cool, cool. And then they would just like tell some incredible story about the time Pedro threw at a Yankee.
Yeah. And we've been talking about Ortiz for weeks. This could be the greatest farewell season of anybody. I mean, because even with just this year, not to bring up Peyton Manning to a Steeler fan, but I mean, he didn't have that great of a regular season. He did walk off, right? Even Bettis, one of the greatest walk-offs ever. He didn't have a bust-like full season. He did have some great games.
But you could argue he almost coughed up.
Oh, my gosh.
He almost had the worst last season.
He did cough it up. Exactly.
It almost could have been tragic.
If not for Big Ben's caginess.
But you're right. This Ortiz is just...
He's crushing it right now. And if they could if they take on the Cubs, I mean, in the curse versus curse, one curse is already finished, but
that I think Cubs winning definitely trumps president, right? Is that like that seems to be the biblical sign that that's about to happen?
I think so. I think the two things together, October and then November, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. And I'll tune into your show to watch how you handle it. Seth, you're the best, man. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate that. After Jimmy Fallon every night on NBC at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Late Night with Seth Meyers.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.